going to go ahead and get started, and we are going to talk about this a little bit more.
And you're ready to open up
and realistic
a legal services program in your church. How do you do that? So today we're going to talk through this list. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this order. Some of this will happen simultaneously. Some of it has to happen before others, but this is how we're going to talk about it today. So first you need to get the support from the church and the local community. You can't open up one of these programs unless the local church that you want to open it up with is on board. There has to be investment as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash investment, although there are some cash investments that will have to be made along the way, but a lot of it can be in the form of donations. Donations of time, donations of space, donations of computers. Sometimes it's a lot easier to ask for things than it is to ask for money. So going away and saying, we need 3 computers to start this program. You can maybe have somebody in your church donate those computers. Another thing is community research. You want to know what's going on in your community. Are there other church-based programs or other local programs who are doing this as well? And maybe they have an overflow of a certain type of case that you weren't even thinking of starting. So maybe you want to walk in and you want to start doing naturalizations, but there's a place down the road who specializes in naturalizations, and so there really isn't a need for that in your community. But adjustment of status is really, really needed. So you want to research what's going on, who's doing what, and what does the community need? How can you be the most helpful? Another thing to look for is, what are the demographics of your communities? A lot of the times, the local church, you already know who's in the community. Sometimes, I know, talking to Jason, he said a lot of people came out of the woodwork that they didn't realize were in the community. So you may want to open up this program and get 3 Spanish translators who are on board and ready to help, but your community is made up mostly of Chinese people. So those Spanish translators just aren't going to be very helpful in that immigrant legal services program. So those types of things, and it'll always change once the doors open, but if you can start to think about things like this before the doors open, it'll help give you time to put out another fire when things do start. So the Board of Immigration Appeals is part of the Department of Justice and part of the Executive Office of Immigration Review. So the Board of Immigration Appeals acts as the appeals court for immigration, and they also grant agency recognition and personal accreditation. So what that means is that the government saw a need. They saw that there wasn't enough capacity for immigration attorneys to deal with. So they allow nonprofit organizations to offer low-cost immigrant legal services to people in their community. So this allows non-attorneys to basically act as immigration attorneys. So the church must be recognized in order for the person to be accredited. And they go hand in hand. The recognition never expires, but the accreditation expires every 3 years. And to apply for this, there is no application fee. So you just need to fill out the certain forms and put in the accompanying evidence, but you don't have to pay a fee for this part of immigration law. So what are the requirements for recognition? The recognition is for the place. It has to be a religious, charitable, or social service. It has to have that kind of purpose. A lot of the times they want to see a 501c3 designation. With churches, sometimes there isn't the actual 501c3 letter. So you just have to show that religious purpose, and you have to show them, and it's relatively easy with a church, but if you do have that 501c3 letter, that just proves it right off the bat. Nominal fees. This is one of those government words where we never know exactly what the definition is, but these programs are allowed to charge a nominal fee. A lot of churches kind of fight against this idea because they haven't really ever charged for ministry before. But this is one of those things that I highly, highly encourage churches to charge at least a small fee. One, it helps to fund the program, and funding is always necessary, that we've talked about a couple times today. But another thing, it really helps your clients to invest in their cases. And it is so much easier, even if it's $5 or $10, the ownership and investment in that case will help them take ownership and really walk through the process with you. It also makes your life a lot easier because they will show up to their programs or their appointments and bring the documents that you ask them to bring. Another thing is knowledge and experience in immigration law. A lot of people see this and say, well, my church has never offered a program like this, so the church doesn't have knowledge or experience with immigration law. This is where the person comes in. The knowledge and experience for the church is tied to the person who will be applying for accreditation. So you will have them get training and experience to bring that knowledge and experience. Immigration Legal Resource Library. So the Board of Immigration Appeals realizes that books are expensive. You do need to have some kind of books in your libraries so you can show that if a difficult issue walks through the door and you don't know the answer, you can go into your library and see and look it up. But they also now are very, very lenient with the internet. And you can show, if you show that you have computers in your office and you have access to certain websites like USCIS, where all of the laws and applicable regulations are online, that is one way to show pieces of your legal library. I do say you want some hard copy resources there. Each location has to be recognized. So if you want to work together with several churches in your community to offer these services and offer immigrant legal services, each address needs to actually go through this process. You can do it, but they each have to apply separately. You also have to show that you have access to technical legal support, either of an immigration attorney who's local and can come work hand in hand with your program on a local level, or an organization like World Relief where you can call them or email them and have kind of that red phone. When something difficult walks in, you can pick up the phone and get an answer and get help through that case. So the requirements for personal accreditation. There are two different types of accreditation, full and partial. And as soon as somebody sees that, everybody wants to go for the full because it sounds like maybe it's better. But the reality is over 90% of the people who are accredited are actually partially accredited. So most people go for the partial. And the difference is fully accredited representatives can go to court. Partially accredited representatives concentrate more on the fees or on the forms and going into the interviews at USCIS. So you have to, in order to get the accreditation, you have to work at a recognized agency. You don't necessarily have to be employed there, but you do have to be volunteering and committed to that recognized agency. Sorry. You also have to have good moral character. This is shown through one of the pieces of the application, which is the letters of recommendation coming from people in your community and your church attesting to this piece. This expires every 3 years, and you have to show continuing legal education. There isn't necessarily a requirement like there is with lawyers, but you do have to show that you're continuing your knowledge in the law. You can be accredited at more than one location. So if several churches in your community start to come together and do this, you can be accredited at each one, but each one has to apply for your accreditation. The church actually applies for the people to be accredited. And one of the pieces, again, is the knowledge and experience. And we advise to get about 40 hours of immigration law training and then some kind of hands-on experience with that. And if you leave the location where you're accredited, your accreditation expires. And the recognized agency is asked to tell the BIA immediately. And so this is to prevent people from going and opening up their own immigration accreditation shops. It has to be tied to that nonprofit, and you can't leave and go open something up on your own. So office space. One of the most important things when thinking through the office space is to have a door. You need to have a door that closes so you can offer confidential meetings with your clients. It's really key to have that piece to encourage the open and honest communication so that you can ensure that they get the best possible service that you can offer them. Ideally, you would also have a waiting place for people to come in. And one thing that you want to think through is if you're going to offer open office hours where people can just walk in and out, or if you're going to do it on an appointment basis. And if you do an appointment only, that may eliminate the need for extra space. And again, your legal resource library, depending on how many of the books you actually have, will dictate maybe how much room you actually need for this piece. You also want to think through things like copy machines, computers, and especially those locking file cabinets. So staff. A lot of the times, if you could have several people to come be an accredited rep, that is wonderful. A lot of the times, it starts out with the bare bones, and you start out with maybe 1 or 2 volunteers who come and are very committed. You want to make sure that whoever's going to be accredited at your sites are very committed and reliable volunteers, because it is an investment. The training does cost money. The experience sometimes costs money, and all of it takes time. So like I said before, you want at least 40 hours of training. One requirement of the BIA is that one piece of that training, not necessarily all of it, but at least one piece of it has to be an overview of immigration law. So you have to kind of get the big picture at some point, so you can recognize those words when you hear them, or maybe certain facts when people walk in will trigger something so you know where to go look it up. Another thing that you want to think through in your programs is support staff. You don't want everything to rely upon the people with the legal knowledge. There are several different aspects to running a good program that you need, and not all of them require legal knowledge. You need the outreach to get people to come into your programs, and to let the community know when you're open and what your hours are. Administrative staff to take in the calls and to schedule the appointments. And then document collection, like was talked about a couple different times today, to make sure that people get everything they need together and walk through that process with them. Services. You want to think through the hours of operation. Not all of these programs are going to be 40-hour programs from 9 to 5 every day. Consistency of hours is more important than the quantity of hours. So if you're going to set up this program as only going to be 2 days a week, you want to make sure that it's the same 2 days every week, and hopefully the same hours on those 2 days every week. And another thing, you want to look at the needs of the community, because a lot of the times people work from 9 to 5. Monday through Friday, and just aren't able to come in during those hours. So you may want to think about doing every other Thursday from 5 to 7 at night, or maybe every other Saturday, something like that. You also want to think about the types of services that you're going to offer. Like I said earlier, you want to take into account what people are offering around you, and if they're offering different services, you may want to see what their overload is, so maybe you can pick up some of that. You also want to think about the training and experience that your accredited representatives have and what they're able to do. Another key thing is referrals. When those difficult cases walk in, or those cases that require going to court, you want to make sure that you have a couple names that you can pass out. AILA has been talked about a couple times today. The immigration attorneys in your communities are going to be wonderful resources. These are a couple other places that you can get referral resources, immigrationlawhelp.org, and then the second link is the roster for the BIA. Every single program that has been recognized in the country and every single person who has been accredited is on this roster. They update it every Tuesday now, and so it's actually very, very up to date. Another thing you want to think about for your church is liability insurance. Because accredited representatives are working as immigration attorneys, you want to make sure that there is some kind of malpractice insurance in place, whether it's for the attorneys who are volunteering in your program or it's the accredited representatives. Most insurance agencies do offer some kind of liability insurance for BIA accredited representatives. However, most insurance agencies who offer this may not be aware that they offer it because they don't know what the BIA is, they've never heard of accredited representative, and they don't know what you mean when you say recognized. So a lot of times it takes education of the insurance companies and just walking them through that. This is a great resource that the BIA recently put out. They're frequently asked questions. This can help sometimes insurance agencies become familiar and know exactly what kind of insurance you may need for your program. So the next steps to think through are to educate the church leaders and gain support, identify that point person, and find a place, preferably with a closing door, to start offering these services.